Bobby Wagner is back, and we're going to debate whether Trey Hendrickson or Myles Garrett makes more sense for the Commanders to pursue. If this isn't the beginning of the new good old days, I don't know what is. That and more on this episode of Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome inside today's episode of Locked On Commanders. I am your host, David Harrison, here with you every Monday through Friday, your friend on the ground, covering the Washington Commanders for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com. Also helping out with WUSA9.com's local coverage of the team as well. I want to thank you for coming through here today for this episode, in which we're going to talk about a lot of things, including players coming back, players who might be coming, and we're going to start it all off with Trey Hendrickson and Myles Garrett. Which player makes the most sense for the Washington Commanders to pursue? I'm going to tell you why it's Trey, not Myles. Every day. So I want to thank you for coming through every single day. I already know you are, but those of you who are not, please subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this episode right now. And if you're new to the show, thanks for finding us. I hope you like it. I hope you like what you hear or see. Hope you come back again. Make sure you come back again. Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are here 5 days a week, all through the offseason. So don't go anywhere. Trey Hendrickson or Myles Garrett, both are good. One might be better. Which one is better, I should say, for the Washington Commanders? The answer here isn't as easy as draft compensation or stats, but it also kind of is. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think Washington needs to go get Trey Hendrickson right now. Give me not the Jim Halper. Give me the Star-Lord. I can't remember the actor's name off the top of my head. Give me the Star-Lord right now gif right here in this episode. Let the rest of the league figure out what needs to happen with Myles Garrett after that. Let's break this down, guys. Let's talk about Trey Hendrickson, Myles Garrett side by side. Myles Garrett turns 30 in December. Trey Hendrickson turns 31 in December. So you want to give a pros tick to Myles Garrett. We're not going to really do it that way, compare pros and cons and all that stuff, but we are going to talk about this stuff. Myles Garrett is due $4.9 million against the cap if traded for as is. Obviously, you know, the team that trades for Myles Garrett could agree to take on a certain amount of the dead cap that the Browns would eat, all that stuff. But just as is, Myles Garrett due $4.9 million against the salary cap by whatever team trades for him. Current deal expires after the 2026 season. So you're getting Myles Garrett as is for 2 years, estimated to earn north of $34 million per year on his next contract. You're going to assume that he's probably going to want a new deal with whatever team trades for him. Trey Hendrickson due $16 million against the cap this season if acquired. Current deal expires after the 2025 season, so it's a one-year deal, estimated to earn north of $29 million per year on his next deal. So a little bit of a difference there. Last 2 years worth of production. When you look at Trey Hendrickson and you look at Myles Garrett, over the past two seasons, Myles Garrett has played 33 games. Trey Hendrickson has played 34. Trey Hendrickson's had 35 sacks. Myles Garrett has had 28. Myles Garrett, 73 solo tackles. Trey Hendrickson, 61. Myles Garrett, 7 forced fumbles. Trey Hendrickson, 5. Myles Garrett, 2 fumble recoveries. Trey Hendrickson, none. 2 Pro Bowls for each, all-pro list, twice for Myles Garrett, 1 all-pro for Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson finished second this year, Defensive Player of the Year, and Myles Garrett has 1 AP Defensive Player of the Year award. So really, when you look at it, guys, these two gentlemen very, very close together when it comes to production, when it comes to their situation. Obviously, you know, again, my assumption is that Myles Garrett is going to want a new deal wherever he lands, but the deal with Trey Hendrickson is you're going to have to give him a new deal. I mean, he's on a 1-year deal. You're not going to trade this type of draft capital to get a 1-year rental, right? And that's where we kind of come in next. What's the fit? Trey Hendrickson had 792 snaps in 2024, split fairly evenly between playing right defensive end and right outside linebacker for the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, what's the real difference between the two? Well, right defensive end tends to be within the tackle box at least a little bit, maybe a little bit of wide 9 there, but on the line of scrimmage, hand in the dirt. Right outside linebacker usually is outside the box, maybe a little bit off the line of scrimmage, standing up. Just 2 different ways of attacking the edge there. Myles Garrett, on the other hand, 613 snaps in 2024 as a right defensive end. His other snaps that he did have came as a left defensive end, a little bit as a right outside linebacker. I want to say PFF credited him with 50 snaps as a right outside linebacker, standing up off the line of scrimmage, things like that. So when you look at the Washington Commanders defense, they like the down lineman defensive ends, a 4-man base front. They like Dorrance Armstrong Jr., Cleveland Ferrell, hand in the dirt, all that kind of stuff. Bring in Dante Fowler Jr. in your pass rush package to be hand in the dirt or stand up outside linebacker. So there's a little bit of a variety there. Certainly any of those guys can fit. We've talked about this with free agent potential targets like Josh Sweat, to where now I won't call it a concern, but a little bit of a hesitation, a hiccup is how much can Josh really be committed to playing hand in the dirt, and how much does Joey Jr. look at him? Well, Trey Hendrickson can certainly do both, and he did both pretty much split duty for the Cincinnati Bengals and did it almost 800 times. So you're going to get a lot of reps out of a guy like Trey Hendrickson if you bring him in. Trade cost, Myles Garrett, the word on the street is you're talking 2 firsts and maybe even more. We've talked about a variety of options, but I think most people pretty much settle on the fact that if and when the Cleveland Browns finally get to the point where they say, all right, guys, we're willing to talk about trade for Myles Garrett, you're talking about 2 first-round picks and then stuff on top of that. Trey Hendrickson, I reached out to James Rapine of Locked On Bengals. He believes number 29 alone would get it done. So you're talking about 1 first-round pick. So we go back to all those production numbers and all that stuff. And the age, again, Trey is 1 year older almost to the day. I mean, his birthday's early December. Myles is late December. So Trey will be 32 for about 3 weeks while Myles is still 30. But eventually he's going to catch back up to that year. You talk about the money, right? Trey is projected, I should say, to earn about $5 million less per year on his new deal. And if you can get him to agree to that now, you start paying that new deal this year. I would even say re-sign Terry McLaurin this year, get a lot of that money out of the way so that next year your cap is kind of refreshed a little bit and you start looking pretty good for what you have in the future. And then again, just the draft compensation, right? You get to save a first-round pick. Perhaps John Allen can be involved. I mean, I know the 49ers didn't bite at bringing John Allen in there, but you look at these 2 teams, the Cleveland Browns. I think a lot of people would say they kind of need to tear it down to the studs and rebuild it, but the Browns kind of seem to be clinging to this idea that they can just continue to try to build competitive teams and not kind of go all in the full rebuild mode. So maybe they're interested in bringing John Allen and then, bring in that first-round pick and bring in a guy like Abdul Carter or something like that, one of the Georgia edge rushers or something like that to help rebuild their defense. The Cincinnati Bengals, on the other hand, we don't have to question. We don't have to guess. The Cincinnati Bengals absolutely are trying to stay relative, right? They've got Joe Burrow, arguably the best passing quarterback, at least the best passer in the National Football League. You've got Jamar Chase, arguably the best receiver in the National Football League. They just franchise tagged T. Higgins. Are currently working on trying to get him on a new deal. So they're trying to keep that offense as fiery as it has ever been, which is basically costing them Trey Hendrickson. Now you bring in John Allen, and, on the surface, you can say, well, John Allen's money is going to be relatively the same to Trey Hendrickson's. However, remember, John Allen has no guaranteed money on this deal. So what he's looking for is security. He's looking for guarantees. He's looking for more years. So if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, you bring John Allen into the middle of that defensive line. You tack on a couple of years to his current deal. You give him some upfront guarantees and signing bonus for him, and also maybe, $4 or $5 million and guaranteed bonus or roster or salary, I should say, base salary in 2025. And then you kick the rest of it down the road a little bit. You put some void years on there if you have enough, things like that. I think it would be 1 void year if you added three void years. If you add it to his current deal, 2 years and then 2 void years. Sorry, I'm all over the place with my own void year math. If you can add John Allen, if you can get the Bengals to bite on John Allen, I don't know, man. Maybe you get that to be a 2nd-round pick and John Allen, or maybe you get it to be number 29 overall and John Allen and the Bengals 5th-round pick or 4th-round pick if they have a 4th or 5th-round pick. I'm not sure of the Bengals' total draft compensation pool right now. So, look, in a vacuum, I think most of us would agree Myles Garrett is the pure better player, right, in a vacuum. But Trey Hendrickson, with all the context, with the disparity in age, disparity in money you're going to have to pay him, the cost is going to take to get him 2 first-round picks versus 1 first-round pick. I think with all the context, Trey Hendrickson might actually be the better deal. I think from a value standpoint, Trey Hendrickson might be the better deal. Both of these guys upgrade your defensive line incredibly compared to what you had last year, right? No disrespect to anybody, but Myles Garrett, Trey Hendrickson, echelons above Cleveland Ferrell there as the opposite defensive end, opposite of Dorrance Armstrong Jr. So, look, and then the bottom line for me is one of these houses is on the market, the other one's not. So you're going out there house shopping and you're looking down the road and you're saying, we really like this house here that's got a for sale sign in front of it. We really like that house over there that maybe will come for sale sometime in the next 30 to 180 days. Don't wait for that house to maybe come on the market. Go get the house that is on the market. Do what you need to do. So if you're asking me, door number one, door number two. Door number one in the vacuum, Myles Garrett, the better player all around. Door number two, Trey Hendrickson, the not as good a player, but still great, all-pro caliber defensive end, edge, outside linebacker, whatever you want to call him. Hey, he's available now. He's going to be cheaper to you in the long run. Go get door number two. Don't walk up to it. Don't knock on it. Don't ring the doorbell. Kick that MFer down and bring Trey Hendrickson into the Washington Commanders organization. What about other names? Two guys coming back, Bobby Wagner, Zane Gonzalez. We finally got some re-signing news. We'll break all of that down coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Chewy. You've probably heard of Chewy. They really do have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. With over 100,000 products from all your favorite brands, Chewy has everything your pet needs, from food and treats to toys, beds, and grooming. And it's not just for dogs and cats. No, it's for birds, fish, reptiles, and small pets too. Chewy also makes it easy to manage your pet's health. We have 2 dogs, 5 cats, 4 birds, 2 outside cats, 3 ducks, and 19 chickens here at the Harrison household. So Chewy deliveries are always a welcome arrival, and it saves us a trip to the store every time we need more of something, anything. Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet healthy and happy. And right now you can save $20 off your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking the link in the description. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. Diving into some of the current headlines around the National Football League and how they may impact the Washington Commanders. Trey Hendrickson, Cincinnati Bengals all-pro caliber edge, requesting a trade from the organization. 2 years in a row now that Trey Hendrickson has requested a trade. Last year, the Bengals said, nah, bro, you ain't going nowhere. This year, they said, all right, we're going to go ahead and give you that trade. So Washington Commanders absolutely should be involved. As far as I'm concerned, don't worry about whether or not Myles Garrett might become available. Go get Trey Hendrickson. Jordan Schultz of Fox Sports reporting that the Commanders are one of many teams getting involved in those conversations. Now, look, we talk about that draft compensation, potentially just number 29 overall, right? James Rapine, Locked On Bengals, says that's probably good enough to do it. However, multiple teams get involved in this thing. That price can go up a little bit, but I would absolutely say go out there and pay, relatively speaking, go pay whatever you need to do and bring him onto a defense that is also going to bring back linebacker Bobby Wagner. Insiders rode a wave of emotions with me on Thursday. I rewrote this show, not even joking, 4 times before I was able to actually sit down and record this thing, because every time I thought I had the show down, I was like, okay, here's what we're going to talk about. Here's how we're going to talk about it. Here's what we're going to do. More news comes out, alters the show. Zane Gonzalez re-signing with the Washington Commanders. Bobby Wagner re-signing with the Washington Commanders. And obviously, Bobby Wagner is going to be the biggest name there. No offense to Zane Gonzalez. I love Zane Gonzalez, former or fellow Arizona State Sun Devil. So, I'm a big fan there of just where he's come from. And look, I like what he did as well. But Bobby Wagner is obviously the marquee player on this thing. Confirmed it with a team source that, yes, Bobby Wagner is coming back. Yes, Zane Gonzalez is coming back. Well, Zane was actually, the news was broken by the team itself. Don't need to confirm, but did confirm with the team that, yes, Bobby Wagner is coming back. Both of these guys are coming back on 1-year deals. And look, for Bobby Wagner, turns 35 this June, spent his first year in Washington in 2024, racked up 132 tackles combined, 10 of those for losses. And then also, I think almost in some ways, more importantly, helped usher in this new culture that the Washington Commanders are operating in, that this roster has solidified and established, along with guys like Terry McLaurin, so on and so forth. And I think that is a really big part of this, because no matter who you're going to bring in here behind these guys, you need to have that culture not only continue, but continue to grow as well. Bobby Wagner credited Dan Quinn and Ken Norton Jr., the linebackers coach, for reasons why he came this far east in the first place. Never played further east than Utah before he signed with Washington last year. Credited those 2 guys as the main catalyst for why he was here. They're still here. Makes all the sense in the world that Bobby's still here. He told me after the NFC Championship game, he absolutely has zero interest in not playing again in 2025. And here we are, 1-year deal for the great Bobby Wagner, future Hall of Famer, and hopefully soon to be Washington Commanders Super Bowl champion, trying to get the Washington Commanders defense into that top 10 range. Zane Gonzalez also re-signing. I know not as exciting, but listen, He only tried 7 field goals in the regular season before they made it to the postseason. Made 5 of those, including 4 of 6 from 40 yards or deeper. The percentage, 5 for 7 is about 70%. So the percentage doesn't look sexy, but I think when you take the context of he only kicked 7 field goals, I mean, you have to kind of take that into account, I think. But once you got to the postseason, he made 7 of 8 field goal attempts, including a game winner in the wild card round. I know it was a doink, but it was still a game winner against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Sent the Commanders on to face the Detroit Lions, where they promptly dispatched the number 1 seed in the NFC. Also made all 8 of his extra point tries. So listen, as long as you're scoring touchdowns, you don't got to worry about anything that Zane Gonzalez is doing. So good news across the board. You got a kicker back that did very, very well for you last year. You got Bobby Wagner back, the heart and soul of your defense, good, solid middle linebacker back as well. Does not take inside linebacker off the draft boards. A little bit of a teaser for tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to reset the Washington Commanders depth chart before the beginning of the open negotiating period on Monday. And then we're going to kind of go over the needs and see where they need to fill holes and all that stuff. Who knows? By that time, we may be talking about a trade agreement between the Bengals and the Commanders for Trey Hendrickson. Hopefully, fingers crossed, right? Let's make that happen. But Zane Gonzalez is also coming back. Look, I hope that Austin Seibert also comes back. Austin Seibert made 90+% of his kicks for Washington before he ultimately suffered 2 injuries, a hip injury and a groin injury that ultimately derailed his season. Now, I don't know where he's at recovery-wise, but if he's on the path to recovery, then certainly hope to see he and Zane Gonzalez back in training camp to battle it out for that job. Would love to see that. Getting back a little bit to the edge conversation, had an insider that actually asked me a question on whether or not getting Trey Hendrickson or Myles Garrett would take off the board the potential to bring back Joey Bosa. So I wanted to say this about that. I don't think that Joey Bosa, the potential for Joey Bosa to come to Washington, I don't think it's impacted by whether or not the Washington Commanders honestly go out there and get Myles Garrett or Trey Hendrickson. I think that you can bring Joey Bosa in potentially. Now, again, a lot of it depends on what Joey Bosa is going out there looking for. If Joey sees himself still as like an every down, type of dude and all that stuff, it's going to be a little bit hard, because if Joey Bosa joins either Trey Hendrickson or Myles Garrett on this defensive line, he's not going to be an every down guy, right? Like, it's going to be him, Dorrance Armstrong, and then Trey Hendrickson / Myles Garrett. And Joey Bosa is going to be kind of a sub package guy. Now, the good news for Joey is the Commanders play sub package a lot. Look at the Dante Fowler stats, a little over 500 snaps, a little under 600 snaps. Joey Bosa played about the same amount of snaps last year for the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, again, battling some injuries, things like that. You're going to get him fairly cheap. He knows Adam Peters. There's a familial tie there. Nick Bosa, Joey Bosa's brother, plays for the San Francisco 49ers. So Adam Peters is kind of there in that mix. And ultimately, if you want to win, man, join a front that has these great guys. I look at it and I kind of look at this front of, you got Daron Payne, Johnny Newton, Dorrance Armstrong Jr., Trey Hendrickson, if I get my way right now, since the Browns aren't coming off of Myles Garrett, and Joey Bosa. You get a sub package in there where you get, Johnny Newton. If it's a race car package, Johnny Newton's the better, pass rusher in theory than Daron Payne is right now. Dorrance Armstrong is on one side. Frankie Lou is outside his shoulder. And then you got Trey Hendrickson reducing down inside a little bit, probably into that B gap area. Joey Bosa's on the outside with Bobby Wagner behind him and Jeremy Chin in the box. That's, you got to reset Jeremy Chin first, but that's one heck of a defensive front to go up against, I think, there. And, we'll see what happens in the NFL draft as well. So, look, I think Joey Bosa, obviously, if you get a starter up front, it's less likely, right? But depends on what Joey wants and what he's out there and what the market really looks like. I got another insider question. This one comes from Steve. Ask me which one makes most sense to go after, Joey Bosa or Myles Garrett. I think up front, if you really want to, boost your defense to the moon, Myles Garrett makes the most sense. You know what I mean? But Joey Bosa, again, when he's healthy, Joey Bosa is one of the best players, one of the best pass rushers in the National Football League, even still to this day. Made the Pro Bowl in 2024, despite the fact that he only played about 600 snaps. But Joey Bosa, certainly, the guy who's available, at this moment in time. So I think there's a lot of sense there to go after him if you want to. And, wouldn't be the first 1-year veteran that was quote unquote washed up that Washington helped kind of reclimate a little bit, right? So Bobby Wagner, Zane Gonzalez are back. Joey Bosa not off the board. Look, DK Metcalf also not off the board. Now, the more trade draft capital you trade to get other players, the less likely you are to trade others. Chris Godwin, latest. Listen, I'm still holding out hope, man. I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, man, tick down, tick down, tick down. Look, if Chris Godwin doesn't want to come to Washington. I really hope he stays in Tampa at the end of the day. But the latest on Chris Godwin, according to Pewter Report, one of the good outlets there covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, says there's still a good chance, quote unquote, that Chris Godwin comes back to Tampa. That's as of Wednesday night. Now, I Googled it, and Google AI, for what it's worth, says that a good chance, quote unquote, is about 50 to 75%. So I'll take those odds. If there's a 25% to 50% chance that Chris Godwin leaves Tampa and Washington might be able to go poach him on the open market as a free agent, I will take those chances. Who's not available? Christian Kirk, no longer available. Jacksonville Jaguars striking a deal with the Houston Texans to get a 2026 7th-round draft pick. So they're going to get a 7th-round draft pick next year from the Houston Texans for Christian Kirk. That is how little the Jacksonville Jaguars think about Christian Kirk. So that's that. So that is our latest news and updates. Got a little bit more about the Washington Commanders, though. We'll do that to wrap up this news episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a little bit of a news catch-up, news cycle in the National Football League. Want to get caught up with everything going on around the National Football League as it pertains and potentially impacts the Washington Commanders. So we're talking about Trey Hendrickson getting his trade request approved, at least, in spirit, right? It hasn't been traded yet, but the trade request has been approved. Myles Garrett still not getting his trade request approved. I mean, every other player that he hears getting their trade request approved, it's just got to be driving him up a wall, man. Potential for John Allen to be involved in one of those. Again, the expectation if John Allen doesn't get traded by the start of the new league year, he'll probably be released. Potentially, if he doesn't get traded by the beginning of the open negotiating period, right, the Washington Commanders may do John a solid and say, listen, we'll release you at 11:30 a.m. on Monday so that by noon Monday you're free to negotiate a free agent contract with other teams. We'll see. They can make that move as early as before we finish recording this show, the way that news happens. Bobby Wagner, Zane Gonzalez, both coming back. Christian Kirk no longer on the board, but some other receiving options. DK Metcalf potentially available for trade. Chris Godwin moving closer and closer to becoming an unrestricted free agent this season. For the Washington Commanders, we do expect to have tight end Zach Ertz back. Not sure when that deal is going to get struck. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a one-year deal, just like Bobby Wagner's. A lot of these veterans that old kind of do that. Zach Ertz has talked about very candidly about considering retiring when before Cliff Kingsbury and the Commanders came calling last year. So it's kind of a year-to-year deal for Zach. So if he wants to play again, I do assume and presume that it will be with the Washington Commanders. We do also expect Dyami Brown to leave. The word on the street is that Dyami Brown, there are a lot of teams that are going to be interested in his services. And when you look around the NFL, man, and you look at Devontae Adams leaving the Jets, Alan Lazard receiving permission to seek a trade from the Jets, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett both leaving the Seattle Seahawks, Christian Kirk leaving the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? There are so many free agent wide receivers. I mean, potentially Chris Godwin leaving the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like, if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you got Mike Evans and Jalen McMillan, their rookie from last year out of Washington, and then you lose Chris Godwin. Why not bring in Dyami Brown and go drafting another guy to round out your free agent or your wide receiver room, right? Wouldn't be a bad move at all. So Dyami Brown, bottom line, expected to get a lot of attention. That's going to drive his price point up, probably past where Adam Peters and the Commanders are comfortable paying him. So I will be extremely happy for Dyami. I will send him a message of encouragement and congratulations when that happens. But we do expect Dyami Brown to leave Washington. So I know I've had a lot of questions from insiders and some YouTube comments and all that stuff asking about both of those guys. So I want to address that there. Last thing on this Deebo Samuel news before it even becomes official. Can't become official until Wednesday afternoon when the new league year begins. But I'm still seeing some people out there a little confused as to where Deebo is going to fit. I think first and foremost, when you look at the potential for Deebo Samuel to impact the Washington Commanders screen pass game, remember there was a lot of passes Jaden Daniels throwing to the perimeter behind the line of scrimmage, some screen, some just quick bubble passes, things like that, to wide receivers. Now, some of them worked. Some of them didn't. There was actually a period of time there where I had on my question note sheet to ask Cliff Kingsbury how to unlock more of those types of plays for his offense. Now, when they worked really well. When they didn't work, they didn't work really poorly. I don't know if that's the right way to put that. But Deebo is kind of a screen pass monster, right? Like, he's kind of that dude that can turn a screen pass or a quick backfield pass like that into a lot of yards. So I think that is number one where Deebo Samuel is going to impact this Washington Commanders offense. But he's got some other things that he can do too, right? A drag route guy, Again, Locked On 49ers came through. We played a clip from their show and talked about not really as much of a man beater as some people might think he is, but he knows how to exploit zone. He knows how to find space for his quarterback, and that's always going to be important. So I think Deebo Samuel's fit in the offense, not as much of a concern. I think that you see a very clear part of Cliff Kingsbury's offense, that behind the line of scrimmage pass game to the wide receiver screen games to the wide receivers tunnel screens, things like that, where Deebo Samuel can make a big impact on the Washington Commanders this year and as a potential kick returner, right? That's another thing that Locked On 49ers kind of dropped on us too, is that the idea of Deebo Samuel being a kick returner, him and maybe Luke McCaffrey back there, him and Austin Eckler maybe back there. I know some insiders have some concerns of Austin returning kicks again after the concussion, but the bottom line is special teams coordinator Larry Izzo is going to have some options to figure out on who's going to return his kickoffs in 2025. So a lot going on, everybody, and we haven't even gotten to the fun part of it yet. Monday is when the real fun starts. It's when I start taking my laptop with me everywhere. So you know what that means. Make sure you're coming back here for Locked On Commanders. Our next episode, we are going to reset the Washington Commanders depth chart as we know it, including linebacker Bobby Wagner coming back. So come back from that. We'll do that. We'll stack and rack the team needs as they enter free agency. In the meantime, if you got questions or comments, all you got to do, text me directly by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider. Join subtext.com/Locked On Commanders. We're getting new insiders on a near daily basis. So I'm super happy for the new insiders. Hopefully you're enjoying it. Obviously, the OG insiders always appreciate your support. And for you, thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast here on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this episode. As always, again, thank you for coming through. And until we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind, and I will see you right back here next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.